Okay, we are back. So thanks for staying with us. Our next topic is about knowing what to do when you're buying an apartment and what to look for and what to search for and everything. So Tarindu, you can introduce our speaker and what we are going to talk about today.
Yes, Isuru. So, what buyers should check for when buying an apartment is our next topic. And to speak about this and to share his experience and knowledge to us, we have Mr. Kishore D. Reddy, Managing Director, CEO of Platinum Realty Investments. He's having decades of experience in real estate business. Over to you, Mr. Kishore.
I think it's my pleasure joining you guys. Yeah, so you can shoot the questions, and then I'm sure we can answer to the best of our ability.
Yes, Mr. Kishore. The first question is, when buying at pre-sale or at launch, what documents should the buyer ask from the developer?
Okay, so if the developer is actually selling a property, he should have got some construction approvals. He should have the land deed, and I mean, these are the two things, that the land belongs to the buyer, right, to the developer. So you need to make sure the buyer should look for the deed of the land, first thing, where the development is happening. Secondly, I think the construction approval from the municipality or the local authority. So they need to check whether the construction permits have been given. Of course, another important document is a provisional condominium plan. So provisional condominium plan is identifying these particular units as a sellable product, and each and individual unit can be identified, and then you could actually purchase the unit. So one of the first things I would say is, like, most of the guys might or might not have even before, like, let's say there is something called a pre-launch. Pre-launch is something where you might get a very good deal. However, the developer wouldn't have got the provisional condominium plan, but he does have the plans of the apartment and the units and everything. So what you need to look at is to make sure that the development is legal. That's the first step. And so that means the land needs to be there, which is being developed, and then you have the construction permit. So then you can from the construction permit, you can identify the units. So ideally, I would say, yes, wait till the provisional condominium plan is approved, but then in many cases the developers might give you a good offer even before the provisional condominium plan is done. So I think what you need to look at is, of course, get a good lawyer to check the deed of the land, and then make sure you check the construction permit. I think that those are the very two important things, at least before or a pre-launch thing.
Yes. Is it a kind of a sale agreement that we're gonna sign with the developer, or it's kind of a deed that we're gonna sign with him?
No, you will not be able to sign a deed initially. Okay, you will first be entering into a sale and purchase agreement. That means the developer is willing to sell, and you as a buyer is willing to purchase this particular apartment. So if there is a link in terms of a provisional condominium plan which can identify the unit, that's perfect. If it is not, then you need to look at the construction permit, and then make sure your sale and purchase agreement reflects the unit you're going to purchase. So if you have the unit that is identified with a certain number of the floors, so let's say a unit on the 10th floor, marked so and so. So you need to look at all those points, and then you need to look at, in the sale and purchase agreement, you need to make sure you need to look at the terms and conditions very well. What are the terms of purchase? When is the delivery date? When is when is the building going to be completed, and when could you move in? So these are all very important points. And of course, to make sure what is the payment plan, when are you going to pay the full money? I mean, you ideally should keep back some money with you till you get a handover. And another thing is a very good thing which most of the developers do also, is put the money into an escrow account, where the sale and purchase agreement is signed, and then an escrow is signed with the bank being escrow agent. So you could actually look at these units. I mean, the sale and purchase agreement should look at all these clauses as well.
Okay. And do I have the right to ask for a completion plan of the development?
Of course, you have the right. I mean, the buyer will have all the right to ask for all the documents. How would the buyer otherwise know that, you know, this particular unit is there or not? You need to know what the plans are. You need to know what the construction is. So yeah, that's a very good question, because most of the times the buyers are hesitant to ask for all these different questions. But I think you should look at asking every single thing. You know, there's nothing wrong in getting all the information about the development, about the plans, about the designs, maybe what the flooring are, what the finishes are. You could also look at things like what do you call what are the construction material being used, you know, all those things. These are very important, and I think the buyers should always look into those things. Ask as much of information you want from the developer, and I'm sure all the developers are willing to share those things.
Okay, you said that certificate of conformity, the COC. What do you mean by the COC?
Okay, a COC, see, what happens is, I'll tell you different stages of the development, right? The developer takes the land first, then puts the plans for approval from the local authority. He gets that approval, then he goes to provisional condominium plan and whatever to the condominium authority and say, listen, I know this is the development I want to do and this is how I want to sell. Then the provisional plans are served. So there are different stages of it, and then let's say the building is complete. So somebody has to authorize that the building is complete and it's fit for living, you know, certificate of conformity, and it's been built the way it has been approved. Uh, so all these things need to be verified, and the local authority gives a certificate called the COC, that is the certificate of conformity of the plans. The development is complete and it has been done in the way it is supposed to be done. Okay, so a COC is very, very important, and only after the COC is got, you would get your condominium approvals, you would get your deed of declarations, then you would do your deed transfer. So the deed transfer is the final stage where the unit is actually transferred to the buyer. Okay, so yeah, so COC is a very, very important document, and you need to ask for that, and deed transfers won't happen without the COC in place. So the COC is a stage when the project is almost complete. So you get that at that stage. So you make sure that you ask for the COC and you receive the COC from the developer and keep a copy.
Okay, you mean that without COC, I don't have any rights to claim for a deed. Is that so?
True. So without having the COC, you don't have the right to basically stay in that apartment. That means it's not a completed premises. The moment you get a COC, it is a completed premises. And once it's a completed premises, a COC is issued. Next to the COC is the condominium plan. Then you do a condominium declaration. Upon this, all these things, only you can do a deed transfer. So you can't do a deed transfer before that.
Okay, and Mr. Kishore, what's the difference between a freehold property and a leasehold property?
Okay, so this is basically a land rights. Okay, so when there are certain lands that are actually purchased freehold in the sense you purchase, you pay the money to the buyer, and you acquire the land, and the person who sold you the land has no rights over the land after he has done. So it's a very, very, very free sort of land. So it's called freehold. So you get the land to your name, and no questions asked, you're the owner. That's a freehold land. However, there are instances where the government authorities or certain trusts which have land in their name, which they can't sell it to you, but instead they would give it to you on a lease, and that's called a leasehold land. However, they would also give you the rights of development on the leasehold land. So what they would give you is, they would give you a 99-year lease and then say, okay, you could develop this land. Again, in that scenario, you need to really look at it at the time of completion of that apartment, whether the deed transfer is being done, and that deed transfer is also to be attested by the landowner, which is the official landowner, which would be the leasehold, the right owner, or the person who's giving the land on lease. So those are called leasehold lands, which are given for development. So there are projects in Sri Lanka that are on leasehold. I mean, you can look at the port city that's coming up, that's on a leasehold. So leasehold, you need to really be very careful with to see that, okay, what are the rights of the buyer of the apartment? I mean, if it's a lease land and if the leaseholder really is not signing the deeds, then what happens? Then you don't have the right. So if the lease is for 99 years, you might have an apartment for 99 years, which is pretty good, but I mean, to the time of the lease. So yeah, so in to answer your question, yes, there are two types of deeds for the land. One is a freehold, which is very good. Always look at a freehold land and a development, which is no complications at all. However, saying so, the leasehold, if done properly, those are also perfect. So the transfer of the units could happen, but you need to really look into those things.
Okay, and Mr. Kusha, at the beginning you mentioned this sales and purchase agreement. So I would like to know what are the right does it entail? I mean, until a deed is issued.
A sale and purchase agreement basically tells you that you as a buyer would want to purchase an apartment from the developer, who as a developer is actually selling it to you. So the sale part of it is from the developer and the purchase part of it is from the buyer. So this is an agreement between the two parties saying that I'm willing to sell, I will complete this apartment and I will give it to you. And the buyer is saying, yes, I'm willing to buy it, provided you complete the apartment and do it. And certain payment terms are agreed to, and then as per the progress is happening, you're paying for it. So because you are paying certain amount uh, into the apartment or into the building before it is even completed, you do have certain rights in terms of right on that particular apartment unit. But saying so, let's say the developer has mortgaged it to somebody, and then the bank takes over, you would not have any right, because the unit is already mortgaged to the bank. Then you have a sale and purchase agreement, but you will not have the rights over the bank. The bank will still have the right, because they have given the loan before you have entered into a sale and purchase agreement. So that's something which you need to look at. Yes, you have certain rights on the unit, but it doesn't mean anything else. You know, if the guy doesn't even build it and there is no unit, what are you talking about? Yes, there would be a case on the land and other things. So you need to be very careful in terms of what the agreement says. Please make sure your sale and purchase agreement is vetted by a good lawyer, where you're comfortable, you understand the clauses of the sale and purchase agreement as well. Yes, it does give you certain rights, and the rights are that or those that are actually mentioned in the sale and purchase agreement. So make sure all the points that you think should be there are inside the sale and purchase agreement.
Okay, and if I'm buying after launch, maybe before completion in primary market, so what sort of documents that the buyer check from the developer? That mean, what documents should the developer have during this stage?
See, as I mentioned, I think what we discussed in the beginning, the developer will, whichever stage before the deed transfer, if you are entering to buy an apartment, even if the apartment is in the final stages or in the mid stages or in the early stages, whichever stage, you need to have a sale and purchase agreement. And of course, in order to verify that the product is there, I mean, you need to verify that the product specifications and other things. So you need to make sure in the sale and purchase agreement, all these things are mentioned. So that's very important. So of course you need to check whether the land is correct, whether the approvals are right. What I mentioned in the beginning, all those apply. So till the time the deed transfer is done, follow everything that was said in the beginning of this of this presentation, and then you need to follow up everything. It doesn't mean you can avoid certain things just because the building is completed. You still need to check the deed, deed of the land deeds and other papers. You still need to check the approvals, you still need to check the provisional condominium plans and all those things.
Okay, and sometimes in completed apartments, they are maybe not they don't might not be having the final COC. So, what may be the reason for that?
Okay, so why they would not have COC is, number one is that they have not completed it. Hmm. But you're saying that yes, they have completed it, but it's not, they don't have a COC. That means they have not completed as per the approved plans. If they have done everything as per the approved plans and approved or the requirements of the authorities, then there's no reason why a COC would be delayed. So maybe they have deviated from the actual plans that were approved, or maybe they have not provided certain facilities that they need to provide. Maybe they haven't provided the garbage rooms. Maybe they have not provided the elevators or whatever it is. So though you think it is completed, it could not be as per the approved plan or as per the development rules and regulations in the permit. So that's the only reason why a COC would get delayed if the building is fully complete. So you need to make sure, you need to talk to the developer and find out the reasons why the COC is not being approved. Probably you can go to the local authority and also check why the COC was not given.
Okay, and Mr. Kishore, what can I do to protect my ownership until my developer get a COC?
I think the main thing is you need to make sure your sale and purchase agreement is very firm. You need to have your deadlines properly. Uh, Probably you could even add penalty clauses where if there is delays, if something goes wrong, that you need to get back your money, or you need to have more rights on what you have paid. So all those things are very important. So the things you need to do to make sure is to make sure your sale and purchase agreement is very strong and very good. If you can make sure of that, then at least your interests are protected in that form. Because till you get deed of transfer, you still don't own anything. It's still the developer that owns everything.
Okay, and Mr. Kishore, is there any certain period that the developer should take the COC after completing the constructions?
Well, sooner the better, because what happens is if he's completed the construction and everything, even the developer would like to take it as soon as possible. So yes, I mean, at the end of it, because there will be a lot of payments that are pending upon the deed of transfer or upon the final COC and other things from the buyers. So it's in the interest of the developer to do that, and it's good for the buyer as well. So though I wouldn't say there is a fixed time limit of that you need to do this at this time or whatever, but it's in the interest of the developer to get it as soon as possible, and it's good for the buyers as well.
Okay, if I'm buying an apartment which is fully completed and but they might not be having a COC, but I'm buying in secondary market. So what sort of things I should take care of if I'm buying from the
Okay, if
secondary
you're
market?
buying, if it's a completed, correct. If it's a completed apartment, and if there is no COC, you should think twice before buying that, and you should really need to see why there is no COC. You're taking a bigger risk, because if it's a completed apartment, why is there no COC? There should be some problems in it. So your interests are actually compromised if you go and end up buying a product like that, or until unless you are sure that okay, maybe the COC is coming in or it's in the process where everything is, you need to really verify a lot. So if you ask me, I would say, that's the risk you're taking, but you need to really go through the details and verify whether there is actually a genuine problem in obtaining the COC, or whether there are faults in the building and construction that's actually taking up time.
Okay, are there any risk if I reside myself in a non-COC development apartment?
Well, yeah, ideally the law says that you could only enter a building after the certificate of conformity is issued, so it's safe for everybody. So when people end up going into buildings which doesn't even have a certificate of conformity, you're taking a bigger risk. maybe the safety standards are not done, maybe the fire protection systems are not in place. You wouldn't know. I mean, there could be a lot of things that are actually lacking, and you're risking in going into occupation. Saying so, most of the people in at least in a country here in Sri Lanka, they do that because they feel that okay, might as well go and occupy the place so that you at least have the apartment instead of just waiting forever. Uh, so that's a very calculated risk, I would say. So yes, there are points that you need to look at, whether it's safety aspects, whether there are fire and safety and other things have been addressed properly, or are you just going into something which could be a risk for you and your loved ones. So yeah, just make sure everything is clear before you go into occupancy. So most of the times people do get into the apartments before the COC is issued. But I would say please be careful with that. And ideally, the best time to move in is after you get the COC.
Okay. What sort of things I should take care of if I'm selecting a developer? So how can I do a background check of my developer?
Okay. Now that's something very important before you buy an apartment, right? I mean, you need to really look at who the developer is. Look at the career record of what they have done. Look at the investors behind the development, how strong the investments are, how structured the company is. Most of the times, whether it's approved by certain investment authorities like the BOI and other things. Okay, not all developers would get the BOI approvals. They would go ahead even without BOI, and they could be reputed developers as well. So you need to make sure, study the developers, study the investors behind the project, see how their track record has been. You could probably know the individuals as well sometimes, see how they are, whether they are genuine people. Saying so, big developers have gone bust. I do remember Selinco when it was developing the present Hyatt. A lot of people bought because it was Selinco, and then when it went bust, they were all in bad shape. So uh, I mean, there is never no I would say over accessing, over looking into the backgrounds of the developer and their track records and other things before you purchase an apartment. Ideally, you should look at all these things, and sometimes, yeah, I mean, you do trust somebody, and then if that works, that's also fine. But make sure all the paperwork is very clear.
Okay. Do you have the right to check about materials and components they are using in the development? Are there any sort of
Yeah, you have all the rights. You have all the rights. You can question the developer. You can write to them and see what is the steel they are using, what is the grade of concrete they are using, and you could have an independent structural engineer who could actually go there and verify on your behalf. You can talk to their consultants. There is no reason why a developer should deny anything to the buyer. So yes, you have the right. You are purchasing a unit, and you might as well check everything properly.
Okay. What if the developer is late with the development? Can a plenty
See, there are
clause
various clauses why
be included?
a development could get late. It could be reasons beyond the developer's control. There could be reasons which was under his control as well. There could be some financial issues. There could be payment issues from the buyers. So there are various reasons why a development would get late. Uh, Ideally, everybody, when you look at the developer side of it, everybody would want to finish it fast, sell it off, get the deeds done, get their balance money and finish the project. However, sometimes certain developers might actually look at taking the money for this particular project, and then they are stuck with other projects. So they transfer the money into the other projects, and that's where escrow and all come into play, where you actually somebody actually make sure that the money you're paying is actually going into developing that particular building and not into various other projects. So there are various reasons why it would happen. And again, if you have to have any rights on claiming from the developer, for delays and other things, you have to make sure that it's all mentioned in your sale and purchase agreement. So if you have all these details in your sale and purchase agreement, you have all the rights to take somebody to task and take them to courts and get your compensation.
Okay, and Kishore, then in the sales and purchase agreement, can I ask the developer to include a penalty clause if it's get delayed
Yes, you could.
before buying?
You could.
Yeah.
You could ask them. Yeah, you could ask them. You could negotiate with the buyer, with the developer, and see what he is willing to put in, what you would want him to put in. It's not as simple as say, oh, okay, if the project gets delayed, I'm going to get so much money back. No, that won't work that way. Then there would be reasons of why the delays could be, if the reasons are beyond the developer's control. So all these points you need to really look into and put that in your S&P agreement.
Okay, and if I have an issue with my developer, where can I get advice and help from?
See, the first step actually is you need to go to the condominium management authority. So that's where I said, when a developer, if you go to a developer who has acquired a provisional condominium plan, that means he's already submitted his plans to the condominium management authority and they have actually approved it, and then you get your agreement according to the sale and purchase agreement mentioned in the condominium provisional condominium plan. So that's the primary authority which would actually look at and guide you on how to proceed, because in terms of apartments, in terms of condominiums, uh, the condominium management authority is somebody who could always assist you even before the project is complete. So yeah, I suppose that's one of the places you could actually go to.
Okay, is there any warranty period from the developer for the completed apartment?
Yes, a lot of developers give you a structural warranty, of the whole structure, which is usually like 10 years. They give you, if something happens to the structure, that they would attend to it. However, in terms of the other things that are inside the apartment which are not structural, the doors and windows and walls, and let's say they have put in some electrical appliances or something like that, for all those things they would probably have a guarantee of 1 year, which is from the supplier as well. Supplier gives it to the developer, then the developer passes that guarantee to you. So usually for the structural guarantees, that's almost 10 years, but then for the rest of it, it's almost just 1 year or 2 years, depending on the developer. When Platinum 1 was developed, of course we got the air conditioning and everything for a 3-year warranty. So we passed that on to the buyers. So yeah, something similar. If we had given, I think, most of the guys more than 3 years warranty on most of the things. So it all depends on the developer, but this is something. It depends on developer to developer, and then ideally, as I said, structural guarantees are like for 10 years or so, and then you would get 1 year warranty for the rest of the things.
Okay, Mr. Kishore, do you think are there any other factors that I should care of when buying an apartment with your experience? If there's any other points you can share with us?
See, I think the main thing that you need to look at is whether the location is good. That's very important when you're buying an apartment. You should see how the layouts are, whether it's congested in certain areas or whether it's okay to move around. You could see how much of common elements are there in the apartment. You need to make sure that, sometimes there are lots of things written on it, but these are not common elements. So you need to really look into what are the common elements, what are your rights on the common areas. You need to look at those things like a swimming pool or a gymnasium. So those, whether what are the facilities that's there. So I would firstly, I would say location and the layouts of the units. That's very important, because once the building is done and once the layouts are done, you can't change it structurally you can't do a lot of things, so you can't really change. So you need to look at those things very importantly, and of course make sure your documentation is correct, the deeds papers of the land, municipal the local authority approvals, the condominium plans, and once the project is complete, the COCs, whether all those are in place, and make sure there are no mortgages on the unit he's selling it, the developer is selling it to you. These are some things that you need to keep in mind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kishore, sharing your experience and knowledge with us for the property buyers when they're making their decision on their next apartment purchase. Thank you very much,
Right.
Mr. Kishore.
Thank you.
We wish you well.
Thank you, and wish you guys also all the best, and have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kishore, for sharing your experience with us. So, Tarindu, before we go to our next session, we'll quickly go through our sponsors and come back again.